Now, German politicians are making their final campaign pushes ahead of Sunday's elections in two eastern states, which could have a dramatic impact on the national political scene. Current polls suggest the far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD, could win the most votes in the states of Thuringia and Saxony. Another anti-establishment party, the newly created left-wing populist Alliance Sahra Wagenknecht, is also expected to do well. Both parties oppose Germany's ongoing military support for Ukraine in its war with Russia.
Pirna, a small town between Dresden and the Czech border. It's early morning, and already members of the far-right Alternative for Germany party are up campaigning. Polls indicate their party could win at least 30% in regional elections, their best result yet. High above their election tent, a dove of peace. The AfD is making Germany's foreign policy a big issue locally, especially its stance on Russia's war in Ukraine.
I wish for Ukrainian people that the war will end.
But can one still talk with Russia at all?
I simply say you can talk to anyone. You just have to do it. And I also think that if peace talks are on the horizon, Mr. Putin will definitely be willing to talk.
This message resonates with some voters. Many here oppose Germany's support for Ukraine. They say the war concerns them more than domestic issues.
The most important thing for me is peace, not an arms race, dialogue. I wish for peace in the world, and I would like Germany not to get involved in this war even more.
Elsewhere in Pirna, there's skepticism about the influence a regional vote can have on geopolitics.
Peace is nice, but you shouldn't talk about that to the people here. You should tell it to Mr. Putin. You really have to think about what the Saxon government can do and what it can't. What does the state parliament in Saxony have to do with foreign policy issues?
And it's not just the AfD. The newly formed left-wing Sahra Wagenknecht Alliance, or BSW, has centered its entire campaign around peace. It's a note which strikes a chord in East Germany, where nostalgia for the region's socialist past and resentment towards the US and NATO are still strong. More than 1,000 supporters have gathered in downtown Dresden to hear the founder and face of the party. A band plays a Russian song to warm up the crowd. But not everyone likes what they're hearing. Many say Wagenknecht's peace narrative is playing along with Putin's propaganda efforts.
Putin is a war criminal who started this war of aggression, and he belongs before the court in The Hague. And Sahra Wagenknecht is practically his spokeswoman in Germany. She's spreading his lies.
Wagenknecht rejects this criticism.
Don't let yourselves be fooled by tales that we are Putin's friends, when we are the ones advocating for peace and diplomacy.
Whether these messages prove effective is ultimately down to voters on Sunday.
And joining me in the studio for more, we have DW's political correspondent, Julia Saudelli. Julia, good to see you. We heard there in that report how Putin's war in Ukraine has been a topic in these regional German elections. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
Yes, so it's been one of the main campaigning topics for one of the parties that is going to probably be one of the revelations of these local elections. That's why there's also a lot of focus from the media and just observers in Germany on these local elections, and that is the AfD, the far-right AfD. And the party has campaigned a lot on the war in Ukraine. They have said that they are against support for Ukraine coming from the central government. They have called for more dialogue with Russia. And there have also been investigations and reports looking into the AfD's ties with Putin and with Russia. And so this has been a big campaigning topic, and we will likely see, if the polls aren't completely off, which is unlikely, the AfD coming in first in one of the two states in Thuringia, and that would be the first time a far-right party wins a state or federal election in Germany since the Nazi era. And again, the war in Ukraine, a big campaign issue, but also migration. The AfD wants to push for much stricter rules on migration. That is something that has seemed to resonate in these parts of the country.
So if the polls are correct and the AfD does win in at least one or perhaps both of these two states, does that mean we will actually see them govern?
Well, that is unlikely because we've seen from the other parties running in these state elections in Thuringia and Saxony, they have vowed not to form any government alliances with the far-right AfD. They said they don't want to have anything to do with them, any cooperation with them, which means that the AfD will likely stay out of the government. But they would still have quite a big share of seats in the local parliaments, and they could cause some disruption there, blocking motions and etc. But this also means that it will likely be very tricky to form governments in these two states because the winning parties or the parties that get the most share of the votes, for example, the conservative CDU, won't have any other parties to form alliances with because we expect the other sort of mainstream German parties that are in government in Berlin to do quite terribly. So there is some risk of instability in these states, and that would also mean, again, a success for the AfD.
Now, Julia, just briefly before I let you go, we've spoken a little bit about the Sahra Wagenknecht Alliance. Can you tell us more about this party? It's had a pretty quick rise in the polls, hasn't it?
Yes, this could be another one of the big revelations of these two state elections. Sahra Wagenknecht is a former left-wing politician. She was part of the Socialist Left Party, which she abandoned to start her own alliance, which didn't exist a year ago, and now it's likely to come in third or maybe even second in these elections. And she has also campaigned on the topics that have been strong for the AfD, so wanting to stop support for Ukraine, wanting to go into dialogue with Russia, and to have stricter measures on migration. But she doesn't use the right-wing and far-right rhetoric of the AfD, so that makes it more appetizing for voters to vote for her who don't want to have anything to do with the far right.
Well, thank you so much for breaking that all down for us. That is DW's political correspondent, Julia Saudelli.